name's Kim Hastings. I'm on the Government Affairs Committee of the Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome everyone and thank you for attending tonight's candidates forum for the Bonita Springs Fire Control Rescue District Board for seat 1 and 3. We also want to thank NCH Healthcare System, who is our business advocacy partner for the Government Affairs Committee. On behalf of the committee, we want to thank all of the candidates for their participation tonight. My role is to be the moderator for tonight's event, and please note we are keeping time with cards that will be held up from the front row, right there. Thank you to the Chamber staff supporting the forum tonight and with timekeeping. Is that better? Thank you. I want to thank the Chamber staff for supporting the forum tonight with the timekeeping and gathering cards with the questions. Here's the format for tonight. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. After opening statements, candidates will be asked the same series of questions. I will ask each question 2 times. I will vary the order of the candidates for each question, and candidates will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Now, with respect to the time cards that will be held up, yellow card equals 15 seconds, and a red card, time's up, please stop. Questions and not statements will be accepted from the audience and asked of the candidates if time permits. Questions should be fair and not directed toward or against a specific candidate. Our goal is to adjourn by 7 o'clock p.m. Index cards have been supplied for questions, and please raise your hand with your card, and a volunteer will collect the cards. Time may not permit all questions to be asked, especially if a similar question has already been asked. We'll be going through the questions to try to put the questions together that may be somewhat similar. Upon conclusion of the questions, each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement at the end of the forum. Couple housekeeping notes. Please turn off or silence all cell phones. God, I hope mine's off. 1 candidate speaks at a time. Please, no interruptions. Audience members, please hold all applause and comments until after the forum concludes, and I'll thank you in advance for your courtesy. Finally, we respectfully request that each candidate answer the questions asked as specifically as you are able. Should you want to expand your answer, we suggest you do so during your 10-minute closing statement.
10 minutes? 2.
2 minutes. I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought I said 2 minutes, but yeah, 10 minutes would be way too long. Let me introduce our candidates. The seat 1 candidates are right here: Edward Fitzgerald and James Murphy. And seat 3 candidates over there: Evans Conforti Jr. and Patrick McCourt. All right, we will now start with opening statements from each candidate. Let's just start with you, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Let me quickly bring you up to date. I'm a retired New York City fire chief. I've been a fire commissioner for 10 years. I'm 79 years old. My health is good. I work out the gym 3 times a week. I have a bad back, a result of an injury suffered in a roof collapse while firefighting in New York City. My heart, lungs, kidney, and liver are originals. Worn, but still working. My balding condition has been stabilized. I have no intention, desire, or expectation to soon be meeting my Lord Jesus. My education, I have been educated beyond my capacity in the best schools in this country. I'm a student of the Spanish language. What I have done or have tried to do: I've saved you $12 million over the last 10 years by decommissioning a useless fire truck. I am the first person to introduce emergency medical transporting for Bonita. I brought television and video capacity to the board meetings. I recommended consultants to do a fire board management and organizational plan. I recommended consultants to study the closing or relocation of firehouses before building them. I spearheaded the 3 fire district consolidation study. I visited every state legislator seeking pension reform. I wrote letters to the editor to honor and defend Penita firefighters. I spent $11,000 of my own money to go to Harvard University to attend the John F. Kennedy School of Government. I spent a week at the National Fire Academy in Maryland studying budget control. What you and I still need to do, consolidate these fire districts, reform pension, 100% pensions and golden umbrellas or parachutes must go, end 9-week-long annual vacations, end 24-hour tours, introduce a modified 8-hour workday, have labor lawyers negotiate union contract, now done by the fire chief, establish a civilian advisory board, stop the hiring of unneeded deputy chief.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? My name is Jim Murphy, and I've been a Bonita Springs resident now since 1998. After working with the fire district for 4 years as CERT captain, I was asked to put in an application for our retiring commissioner, the great Frank Lyles. During that interview process, the Board of Commissioners asked me, if appointed and not appointed, would you be willing to run for the seat in November's election? My response was most likely. I did not get the 3rd vote, but I decided I still would be a good candidate for the Board of Commissioners. After serving on numerous private sector community boards, I believe I bring a set of skills that will be a good fit with other serving commissioners. I'm a fiscal conservative who understands that I am to be a representative of the taxpayers. I also believe that the safety and training of our public servants is extremely important. Bonita Springs deserves a high standard of medical and fire suppression responses, and a fire station-based transport of patients is a very important issue to me and to our community.
Thank you. Mr. Conforti?
Thanks. I would like to thank the Chamber for sponsoring this event. I moved to Bonita in 1997, and I can remember having to travel to Fort Myers or Naples to shop or go to a restaurant. I've been a commissioner since 1998 and have seen Bonita Springs grow from a small town into a vibrant community that it is today. As a commissioner, the millage rate cannot be your only concern. You must balance your obligations to the taxpayer with the needs of the department and its employees. And as we begin another growth spurt, you must be prepared for that growth. As commissioner, I believe I have always been concerned with this delicate balance. I am proud of a lot of the past accomplishments since I've been on this board. We've built 2 brand new stations, replaced one, and renovated another with minimal debt. And all of these stations were built with the beauty of the community in mind. We were one of the first departments to have ALS engines, having a paramedic on every truck. I believe this has saved numerous lives, and we're still working on ambulance transport, which is a must. I came here from New York. I was a firefighter volunteer for 17 years, and I was a police officer for 22. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCourt?
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Chamber for putting this program together, but I'd especially like to thank the citizens that are here to hear the story. And I certainly wish that more were here, but if you're not, I hope that those that are here will pass the story on. I'd like to start out by saying that I am not here to criticize the fire department. I get an awful lot of flack that I am a critic of the fire department, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. I'm here to shine a light on what I think is a serious problem. And it seems like everybody tries to step up and suggest change. gets criticized and personally attacked, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me because the only losers then are the citizens. And as you all know, 4 years ago I ran for a seat here, and we had a very difficult time in that election. But fortunately, that hasn't happened this time. And I'd like to thank the chief especially because I believe that he's been instrumental in keeping a lid on it, which I think is good for all of us. Fortunately, about 45.5% of the people that listened to the story last time voted for change. That should have been a mandate to this group that sits up there, the fire board, that they needed to effect some changes. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And the citizens deserve a lot better. I'm not a politician. I call myself a citizen legislator. I was a former city councilman, and I brought to you the private company to run your building department. I was also instrumental in getting Lee County and Collier County to get together and put their buses together so people can now ride from Bonita down to Naples, which I thought was a ridiculous thing that didn't happen. And I was also on the 4-to-1 end of a lot of votes that ended up in somewhat of a disaster over the years. So I'm here to offer a challenge, and I think that whoever gets it, okay? We'll say that later.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to start with Mr. Murphy for our first question. What do you view as the role of the Board of Fire Commissioners in this district?
I believe that the first thing you have to look at is the protection of the firefighters and the taxpayers. In order to be a good fire commissioner, you have to be aware of budgetary items. You have to know how to read budgets. I've done that for many years now. And I believe I've got a pretty good grasp on what's going on here. I've been studying it pretty carefully. As far as the firefighters, I've worked with them for 4 years now in the back here, training with them, training a team, and watching what they go through in their fire training, sitting on the recovery area, helping them cool down after they come out of the fires and taking their temperatures. A lot of the people in here from the CERT team worked with me on that, and it was quite an experience to see what these guys go through in their training. Last week I was out here and they were in the hazmat, all their uniforms in the high heat, and to watch them going through the training with their gloves on, trying to pick up tiny little things. I have a great respect for the firefighters here.
Thank you. Do you need me to repeat the question, Mr. Conforti?
No. I believe the commissioner's obligation is to oversee the budget and to make sure that this department and the people and the citizens have the best possible department and also my mind went blank. I'm sorry. We're obligated to make sure that everyone is served within this community. We need the best possible equipment, the best possible men, and we need a budget that is within reason.
Thank you. Mr. McCourt?
I am going to apologize. I'm not the oldest one at the table here, but I am the hardest of hearing, so would you mind repeating the question?
I absolutely would not mind. What do you view as the role of the Board of Fire Commissioners in this district?
Okay, thank you. I view the role of the fire commissioners as being having a responsibility to provide fire and rescue service to the folks in this community. And that's not to say that their responsibility is to run a fire department. I think there's a distinction there that perhaps has never been made. But at the shall we say, the senior level of the taxing district that has this authority, I believe it's the responsibility to provide the service. Now, is the best way to provide that service have our own fire department have control of it? Yes, probably it is. But we have to make that distinction. And the role of the individuals that are up here is to set budget and set policy, not to run a fire department. I made it.
Thank you. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Fire commissioners are elected by the people to represent the people, and that is our function. We have a staff here of professionals who will give you the best fire department in the world, and they have done that, by the way, but they need some controls. They need controls in controlling that budget, spending the money. The commissioner is that control. The only oversight is the fire commissioner. And we're supposed to work as a team, 5 people, to do the exact same job. I will tell you that's not happening, and hasn't happened in the 10 years that I've been here. I am a reform commissioner. It means I look at everything this department does and try to see if it is the best thing for the taxpayer. I am the taxpayer's representative, and you're supposed to have 5 of us.
Thank you. For this next question, I'm going to start with you, Mr. Conforti. To the best of your knowledge, how do Bonita Springs firefighters' salaries and benefits compare with other fire districts in the county and state? And do you have any thoughts on changes to the current structure?
I believe our salary structure here is competitive with our other local departments. We do an extensive study each time that we do contract negotiations, and we come up with a fair a fair salary and wage package and benefits for the firefighters here. I don't think that we're out of line with any of that.
Thank you. Mr. McCourt, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I think I got it this time. Thank you. I think the best way to say it is that we probably are competitive with the other local fire departments. The question is, are we competitive with reality? And are we competitive with what's out there in the rest of the world? I know I have a nephew who is a firefighter up in Chicago, and he would love to come down here when he heard how much these guys make, okay? Now again, I'm not being critical of the firefighters, but what I'm saying is that I think we have failed in the past to control budgets to the point where we stay in that, what I will call the reality range.
Thank you. Mr. Fitzgerald.
I think the firefighter salary is a very fair salary, acknowledging they work a 56-hour work week, they work Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. They're certainly not overpaid. I don't care who you compare them to. Their benefit package, I think, is out of line. I think they have too much time off. I think the pension is astronomical, and I would like to change some of those things. But the salary for their work week is a very fair salary.
Thank you. And Mr. Murphy.
One thing you have to keep in mind is that this is a competition for employment. If you're not paying what other people are paying, you're losing your people. You're putting all that training into these guys, and it's a lot of money to train them to get to a certain level. And if all of a sudden you're going to lose them, what was it all worth? You're going to save more money by training and retaining. I spent a lot of time working in HR in my community. I did take a look at what their benefit packages are, and very carefully you have to compare them with what everybody else is getting. It's a very competitive world in this place. Thank you.
We'll start with Mr. McCourt for this next question. What are your thoughts about growth in this fire district over the next 5 years and the Board of Fire Commissioners' role in planning for that growth?
Well, I think the Board of Fire Commissioners planning that is critical, obviously. I think we need some dramatic change, and I think it needs to be in the area of emergency medical response, because if anywhere we're weak, that certainly is it. And I think to bring this community into the 21st century, we should be looking at first of all, understand that 80% or so of the calls that we make are emergency medical calls. So that's clearly our job. You can't dispute that. Secondly, I believe we should have a goal to have a clinically qualified paramedic on the scene in 5 minutes or less anywhere in the city. And I think that goal is very accomplishable.
Thank you. Mr. Fitzgerald.
there are plans now in Bonita Springs and the Bonita Springs Fire Department to expand our department from 5 to 8 stations. That may be necessary. I made a motion to this board to bring a consultant in and do a proper study and determine if we could close a station, relocate a station, and maybe serve that population better with 6 fire stations. My motion was denied, so we're going to do it. We're going to wing it and let the staff determine the location of fire stations. And I don't believe the Board of Commissioners, without some professional help, should be given that responsibility. We don't have the expertise to do it, and it's not the way to do it.
Thank you.
Could you repeat the question?
Absolutely.
So I get it right.
What are your thoughts about growth in the fire district over the next 5 years and the Board of Fire Commissioners' role in planning for that growth?
From what I understand, there's already 2 properties purchased, one on East Bonita and one on Three Oaks. Those properties are being purchased and have been purchased for the purpose of serving the expected growth. And response time is in critical need. You have to pay attention to, when you have a population of 5,000 new homes on East Bonita, you've got to have something out there to service them. They can't be waiting 15 minutes for a fire truck or an ambulance to show up. And I think one thing we're all in agreement here up front is that we need to have a fire station-based transport for this community.
Thank you. Mr. McCourt.
Okay. We have purchased 2 pieces of property within Bonita.
Excuse me, Conforti. I realized what you were looking at.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We have purchased 2 pieces of property within Bonita, one in the East End and one out off Imperial. Those stations will probably be built within 2 to 3 years, I would think, the way the growth is going. This community slowed down quite a bit. However, if you look around here, you see houses going up all over. And we are certainly going to need those stations in the future, just for the response times involved. As far as emergency transport, I said earlier, it is a must, and it will come.
Thank you. Start this next question with you, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Please.
What do you view as the greatest challenges currently facing the Bonita Springs Fire District? And if elected, what is your plan to meet these challenges?
The greatest challenge right now is to introduce ambulance emergency medical transport, to take it over from EMS, who was, in all honesty, not doing a great job. And without the fire department backing them up, they would be doing a horrible job. Bonita Springs Fire Department can do that job better than anybody else. So our greatest challenge is getting permission to do it from the county. And we are doing that. We have prepared papers. We have an attorney. We have the evidence, and we can comply with the law. The county should give us the permission. What can I do to help? I hope I have, as commissioner, relayed to the chief and the staff that I support this very much. I have written letters. I just am for it. I've been for it for a very, very long time, and the chief knows it.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
I couldn't agree more. I think he's right on with that comment. And I would further it by saying I would be willing to go to the county commissioners, speaking to them one-on-one. Perhaps with a little change, we might be able to make some progress for this very necessary step.
Thank you. Mr. Conforti?
I believe the EMS transport is probably the most important thing. And I feel that the county has really stonewalled us. We've gone out of our way to present them with the evidence necessary to do EMS transport, and they've stopped us at every turn. We're not going to stop. We will continue until we get that transport.
Thank you. Mr.
I
McCourt?
think the greatest challenge is not going to be handled in the next 3 or 4 years. It's going to take much longer than that. But we need to change the culture of this department from one of firefighting to one of medical response. and/or we have to have separate teams to do it one way or another. But the name of the game in the 21st century is emergency medical response. That's where the need is, that's where the growth is, and that's the direction we ought to be moving in.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, we'll start with you for this next question. What role do you see the fire district playing in the economic development of Bonita Springs and Lee County?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
Let me say it again. What role do you see the fire district playing in the economic development of Bonita Springs and Lee County? Or let me say it a different way. What role do you see the Board of Fire Commissioners playing in the economic development of Bonita Springs and Lee County?
One of the most important things with the economic development is that we have a good fire department for the insurance rates for businesses to move here, the ISO. This is a very highly rated fire department. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the best and 10 being the worst, this is a 3. And that's very good. And there'd be even a 2 if they didn't have to go way out east on East Bonita to make some of these response time calls. But I'm very proud of what they're doing, and it really does help us all with our insurance rates.
Thank you. Mr. Conforti.
Would you repeat it, please?
Repeat it? Yes. What role do you see the fire district and the Board of Fire Commissioners playing in the economic development of Bonita Springs and Lee County?
Well, first of all, I want to say that having an independent district is very important. Not having to answer to Lee County or to a city allows us to run a department and run it with our own staff. So it does play a major role in the economy because Lee County seems to treat Bonita like it's a second-class place. And I feel that having an independent district like we have is most important.
Thank you. Mr. McCourt?
Thank you. Economic development in Bonita Springs will happen. We don't have to do very much to guide that. We've got a beautiful location, we've got a wonderful climate, we've got all those good things going for us. The consideration that most business executives have in bringing a company down here or bringing employees down here is, number one, how are the schools? Number two, do you have good hospitals? And that's especially important to us with a lot of our senior population. And number three is emergency responses. And if we continue to have people chuckling at us because they called, my wife had a heart attack and they sent a fire engine out instead of an ambulance, this is going to look bad. This is not going to help the economy. What we need is a qualified paramedic on the scene in 5 minutes or less, driving the appropriate equipment.
Thank you. And Mr. Fitzgerald?
I think this Board of Commissioners and this department has done a lot in the area of economic development. By the way, one of them is, just look at your 5 stations in Bonita Springs. Every one of them is gorgeous. This commission approved the expense of putting up stations that the residents could be proud of. We also have a joint effort with the city to do one-stop permit processing to enhance economic development. We are part of the economic development team. Also, a good Board of Commissioners will keep the tax rate down, and there will be no displeasure with paying the taxes for the fire service.